I'm improving and I'm loving it. Even now, it's just knowing the details. Like I said, Coach Clint, man, he's all about the details. He always on that. We spend a lot of time, and even just us as players, we spend a lot of time after practice. Like the reason why I'm here late is because like a couple of the D-line, we stay out there 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes after everybody goes in. We call it Breakfast Club, but we're really late. But, we just spend the time just working on our craft, and that's not us going 100%. We're not going full throttle, but it's just making sure that you get them hands right. You stab lift, and you make sure that you work them swipes, and you want to make sure that you, just little detail, little nuances that come with it. And if you're doing it in the group, it started out with just 2, now it's like 3, 4, 5.
Hey, y'all. Of course, it's Matt Rogers on the Honorable Mention podcast. Today, we have Chris Franklin from NJ.com, and I was just talking to him off air about how long he's been covering at NJ.com. He's done a variety of different things, but these days he's covering the Philadelphia Eagles. He's at OTAs. Today, before we even get into it, Chris, you wrote Eagles OTA observation: defense does something it struggled with last season. I'm trying to put in a plug for you, but basically you talk about how Isiah Rodgers Sr. had a pretty good day at practice. I don't want to give the people too much of your hard work, but put in a plug there real quick.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, when we've been covering there's 2 of us, usually two of us rotating reporter-wise at NJ.com. So myself and Caden Steele were there today, and we had the coverage on that. But looking overall, this defense, and I'm going to preface this by saying it's May. It's late May.
No,
it's an OTA. It's 7-on-7s and everything else. But the way the defense played today, especially getting turnovers, there were 4 interceptions they got. The whole defense as a whole got 4 interceptions today.
Wow.
And you look at the way they were able to ball haul. Because when you look at that in contrast to the way that the season ended, how teams are just going 10, 15 yards at will in the middle. And all of a sudden you have these guys like Isiah Rodgers Sr., who's impressed me so far in these 2 weeks of seeing that. You look at, and even Zach Bohm got in on it. It was granted of the pass breakup, but he got it. You see all the stuff and the way they're attacking, at least in 7-on-7s, I think it bodes well for what could be if they continue down this path on that.
Okay. Well, that's music to everybody's ears, because last year it was deplorable. I mean, it was as bad as it could get. It's like kind of Byron Maxwell-ish defense, pass defense.
And now you have memories of sconces and Kerry Williams alongside and wonder what's going on. Oh my gosh.
It was bad. I mean, not only were people getting open at will at the end of the season for the Eagles, they were then having caught a pass wide open. Then whenever a guy gets close to them 3 or 4 or 5 yards down the field, then guys weren't tackling well. It really showed itself in the Buccaneers playoff game. It was rugged.
It really was. And you're looking as far, and this is where I think coaching comes in. Sometimes the simplest stuff can be the biggest things, because right now, especially in the first couple of days, when you're looking at the schedules for OTAs, like when coaches schedule these out, a lot of their early stuff is just base stuff. And then you just build upon what you can do and go from there. Training camp, the same structure. So the fact they're playing a base vanilla type stuff, I think it's allowing some of these younger guys and some of the newer players to get used to it and just let their athleticism go. Vic Fangio is going to throw some more stuff in you. You can guarantee he's going to throw some more stuff in.
You got to throw a wrinkle. You have to. Yeah. But at least to start off with. Yeah, absolutely.
You need that, especially after 9 interceptions last year. You finished the team. The offense definitely contributed with a -10, but 9 interceptions last year. Yeah, they could use some more from the secondary.
That's just a strikingly low number of 9 picks. I mean, you have single players who get 9 picks in seasons.
Yeah, Deron Bland's just sitting there looking like, I'm sitting around and getting all these things, and you guys can't even get it in one. Like, it's rough, and that's why I think when you look at you should, quite frankly, to be honest, when you look at all the resources they used this offseason and last season in that secondary, you need to expect stuff like this. And I think this goes back to Chris Jackson. Because you look at that, you look at the job he does, you look at the job that you're gonna get at when you have a competent secondary coach. Chris Jackson.
Right. Chris Christian Parker. Yeah.
I think I knew the problem is I knew I was on Chris Jackson, Christian Parker, and Chris Parker. And I've always messed this stuff like since he's getting. I'm like, oh, he's great. And then here I do in front of everybody. Like, oh, that's that one too. Yeah, he's you look at it
Shout
like
out to
his
Christian
track
Parker.
record. Yeah,
Yeah.
he does a great job.
Look at the track record, folks. Google him.
Yeah,
I might even have to put something on the screen.
When you look at what he's done in Denver to the point where the Eagles were trying to get defensive backs off the Denver Broncos the practice spot once they're getting cut or on the lower end of their roster, and now you got him with the same type of talent, even more, and you look at what you can do. I think that's a big key, and you look at what he can do, and that's I think is a huge upgrade.
Are you saying Quignon is Patrick Surtain, Jair Alexander? Is that what? Because
I'm not going to go that far yet because I
play, but
I know I'm in the minority in this, but I look at the way I know Slay called lost slack last year. Slay still looked good.
He's still good. He's still good. He's
still
better this season than he was last year for sure. But he's on the decline. I mean, I think he's a very good number. I don't think he's a lockdown at this point.
So I look at when you look at the way you can move him around. The only person I think that can really truly and the receiver I thought that would truly give him severe issues. He's had good success with Justin Jefferson. That's the guy I'm like,
absolutely.
That's too. Everybody else, I'm like, all right, depends on the week to week and what they're asking to do. But I look at, I'll say, Surtain, free agent next year, and with Wink, you never know. But yeah, it's that will be interesting to watch too.
If Denver starts playing really badly, and then the Patrick Surtain's like, I'm leaving anyways. Does Howie get a bar?
I'll say this, and I'm going to work on this. This is probably not for a month from now, but there's an interesting trend happening at the Devonta Smith softball game. The last 2 years, people on the visiting team have miraculously signed. Terrell Edmonds was the first year. He was on the visitor team. Saquon Barkley was on the visiting team last year.
Okay.
Surtain has also been on the visiting team on both. I think he may be on the home team, but he's been at that game the last 2 years. So maybe he's the third one next year. Who knows? But
Patrick Surtain starts on every team in the NFL.
Yeah, and softball. It's softball ball thing too. He's been on the softball game, so that's what I'm like. You know what? Yeah, there's a trend going. Who knows?
So let's get into the battle for wide receiver 3. Tell us about who's been standing out. They got John Ross. Last time you were on here, we talked about John Ross potentially coming, and then I think you said it was like you were on taking the over. You thought that it could really happen and then how is he playing in the preseason, or not preseason, but the OTAs?
Well, I'll start off with this. I was shocked that Devontae Parker decided to retire. I really was. And that came out, I was like, well, this is Paris Campbell's job. And at first, like, and I'll start this too. Devontae Smith has been excuse. He hasn't been in OTAs. They've been open to the media. He hasn't been there. He was I think he was out in Disney World. Somebody's tweeted he was out in Disney World. But look at the way that Campbell's done. He's been on the outside primarily. He's done a decent job. He's solid. And so
playing on the outside,
Yes, and now when he comes in, when Smith comes back, and I think he'll be back from mandatory minicamp. When you get him there, I'm really intrigued to see how he works on the inside. That being said, we saw John Ross's first time in practice today. It's Thursday. So practice, he looked good. I look at the way he was working the sidelines, the way Kenny Pickett targeted him deep a couple of times around the sidelines, and he looked good. He made a couple good catches. Is real fluid. He still got that quickness and speed. And he said, and the thing I thought was interesting is that when we talked to him after practice, he said he feels like he's faster than he was beforehand. And he put that caveat saying he's not running 4.19 or 4.18 or anything like that.
I mean,
but the fact he's going quick. It's quick. It's like, and that's what happened when you're a veteran. You know where you're going. You know what routes is expected of you, and then you do it with quickness. That's good. Now, if you can get him to be the speed threat that Quez Watkins was they envision for Quez Watkins to just very get vertical. If he just catches half those deep routes, this offense is so much better because it opens up so much space. Gets to have him, and that's the thing. I really want to see how he works inside as well too compared to Campbell. So what used to be is like, oh wow, Paris Campbell's job to lose. Now all of a sudden, like,
yep,
all right, maybe you got this, and then you got Britton Covey too. He was targeted a few times today too. So yeah, I still think it's basically between Parker and Ross, and setting up for a very good mandatory minicamp and training camp.
They're going to carry 6.
You might, just for the fact when you look at the returners, it's it's a tough problem to have when it comes to look at wide receiver and corners because the last two are going to come down to special teams. You got two, you need the two returners, so you start worrying. You can't cut Covey because if you do, he's not going to go through waivers this time. Yeah, looking at Johnny Wilson, do you try to slide him through and hope you get him to a practice squad? You look at Ainias Smith, he's still recovering from that stress fracture in the shin. The only thing he really did, he's done so far is catch punts and watch a sign. He really wasn't taking part in a lot of the drills. So since he wasn't taking part in the 707, and some of the individual drills. So it's tough. You can try to sneak six through. You can try to cut one of the guys. You hope that nobody picks them up, but which one do you do it? Because they're both going to be wanted. I think Johnny Wilson's size and Ainias Smith skill. It's still way early and there's still a lot to be done, but you can foresee there'll be some tough decisions coming in wide receiver.
They might. I don't know. It seems to me like they might go thin at tight end. Tight end might be where they cut back. Maybe only carry three guys there. Maybe if they really want to be wide receiver dependent with Kellen's system, you maybe go two and trust somebody on a practice squad. Pick up
because even then you're looking at you need a decent blocking option, and I'm like Dallas Goddard's pretty much your best blockers you have at tight end, but he's going to be your starter, and you want to get him out in routes. So you got C.J. Uzomah, Alberto, and Grant Calcaterra, and even then you're still looking like, okay, do you try to sneak one of these guys through? I would rather
lose Calcaterra than lose a Ainias Smith. I think Ainias Smith is going to be electric.
I just in the way we've seen Kellen in terms of how he's doing his play designs and how he's setting up the motion and everything. There is so and I know the name. The name shake it brings shakes shivers of like you're like, wow, he should have been more. He reminds me of Tavon Austin in the fact you can line up as a running back, wide receiver, slot, and everything else. You can do so much with him. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, you don't want to let a player with his skills and his option go. So there's a lot you can do with him. A lot.
DBs are not going to want to tag. I'm calling it early. I'm the 6 months when it starts getting cold in November, when he starts getting integrated into the offense and he gets in the open field. These corners are safeties. Sure. You get a Jamal Adams, folks like that who are going to bring the hammer. Sure. They'll be fine. But a lot of these corners are going to shirk from trying to tackle him. He looks like Swift, not as big as Swift, but he looks like he runs like a Swift in the open field.
And when you have a guy who has experience playing running back, he's not going to be afraid of contact either. So that helps as well too. And you've seen the shiftiness that he uses. Like you see it there, like especially looking at Texas A&M film, you see the capabilities there. You can envision him, and there's so much they can do with them. And you don't need to give him the ball 10, 15 times because you got all the other weapons. You just see somebody, just having him on the field, knowing that he's a threat to be a jet sweep guy or run the ball so much, or hell, even put him back in there with Saquon Barkley in the backfield, like in a weird shot and in a shotgun with Barkley and Smith on either side. You put one of them in motion, a late motion. It's so much they can do
eye
with
candy.
It's fun.
NFL football is a half a second here, half a second there. If a linebacker's eyes gets drawn away and then they look away from AJ, they snap it fast. AJ Brown just runs past somebody because of that.
There may have been an instance, a couple instances. Yep, there may have been a couple instances today's practice where there was late motion with a certain running back, and next thing you know, and there was one look, and then the next thing you know, it looks like the same look, and there's something coming off of that. You're like, what?
This is what we weren't seeing. This is what we weren't.
It's so much fun. With it's no secret. I'm an offensive minded guy. I gravitate to that side of the ball. And you just look at the options that you can run off of each play and the play action. It's just, it's fun.
It is. And you and I last season, we can talk about this now because the season's over. But last year, you and I were talking about all of the things that they could have done off of the tush push, and you saw maybe like 2 or 3 variations, and they were kind of rusty looking, except for the reverse touchdown to DeAndre Swift in at the Commanders. Other than that, I mean the throw that they had on 4th down, I think in the playoffs, I was glad Devontae came down with it, but that play looked way too difficult. And a couple other ones didn't look so great.
I get the point of like trying to hold some of those and not showing them early in the season if you want to surprise them, especially like say if it's a 2 point play or it's late and you're in the red zone, you want to pop that stuff open. But there are times, especially when they're sputtering, you thought he would have seen some of that. And the tush push, it doesn't have to be it's not the offense. To me, tush push goes in the same thing as a wildcat and everything else.
Right.
It's a part of your offense, but you
Correct.
show it and you threaten it. You can even shift out of it. Just shift out.
Exactly.
Shift out of it, and then teams are like, because you know
same personnel. You have Devontae Smith in the backfield sometimes on the tush push.
You get that if you just put that lineman and teams get you like, okay, you know the Eagles have shown this, and they get all their heavy personnel and you spread them out. The sheer look of like defensive coordinators going like, wait, what?
Timeout.
Oh no, timeout. It's either give them a force on a burn timeout, or you get you're feeling a fourth, like most of the times like that Eagle look, the three defensive tackles all together, or you go 4-4 or 5-2. You're sitting there being telling me you got a wide receiver all of a sudden covered by a linebacker in the red zone.
Right. That's right. And the wide receiver's name's Devontae Smith.
Yeah,
AJ Brown.
A wide receiver going against a reserve linebacker who's used to just going rushing immediately on a short yardage situation. Yeah.
And there's also something to be, and we're not going to beat up on the 2023 Eagles too much here, but I will say there's something to be said for, and you played ball too. I mean, I need to have run the play in the game too. There's something to be said for that. Like I have run this against scout team. I've run it even against, in some live action, but it's different running against another team with the lights on and everything. And that was only high school for me. I can't imagine at the NFL level.
Game speed is completely different from practice speed. And there are times, and even when some of these plays that we've seen them run and be successful, there are times where they run it a lot earlier in the season, but a play is not in the game plan for that particular week. And so they don't run it, but then they throw it out there, and then you see also like, that was a great play call. Yeah, they pretty much didn't run in practice. There was a play last year, I think earlier in the year, where I forget which game, but there was a play last year in the red zone where they didn't have it necessarily in their game plan. They didn't practice it that week, but Hurts audible to it, and next thing you know, it worked. So it happens a lot. It's just a matter of making sure you had execution and you repped it enough in practice that you've done it where it's like, you know what, that's going to work at that time. So it's the fun science trying to balance what plays you could run and get in the playbook versus what you have for that week. Because sometimes there's after a quarter, just like, the heck with this game plan. Let's just go this. So it's crazy.
So who are your top of the lesser known guys? Let's go through some of these names. Shaquan Davis, number 47, Joseph Nada, number 86, Austin Watkins Jr. He's also number 89, same number as Johnny Wilson has at the moment. Did you notice? I haven't. Oh, and the last person is Jacob Harris. But back to Austin Watkins, they both have number 89 at practice.
I didn't look for Watkins today. I didn't. To be honest, I didn't even look for Watkins stuff. Wilson got a lot of run today. Wilson definitely got a lot of run. He got a lot of run the last 2 weeks. Harris was on the sideline. He was sidelined today. I don't know if it was injury related or just giving him time off, something quick, but he was on the sideline. The guy to me, I know Shaquan Davis has the cool nickname of Baby Megatron and all that stuff, but the guy to me who really has been outstanding out of all those who's improved year over year is Joseph Nada. I mean,
yes,
and it just fits what the Eagles have been doing. You look for the big receivers to help you with the possession because it makes sense. Get the bigger to evoke it's almost like saying Voldemort, but evoke what Chip Kelly says: big people bit up little people. So you need to make sure you get a bigger target radius for your quarterbacks to get those 50-50 balls. That works. And you look at Nada in a way; he looks a lot more fluid when he's running his routes. He's got the cuts. He's setting up the defensive backs well. I think of all the four of those guys, I think he's the one that really has stood out with. Harris got a lot of run the previous week because they were thin at the receiver numbers. But I look at that and I'm thinking, you know what? Yeah, Nada is the one who I wouldn't say he's going to be the guy that really, really pushes and makes a roster spot, but he's going to make things interesting. You've seen him in preseason games this year.
The Eagles went and picked up. They doing a lot of pickups of Jets. They got Huff earlier in the season, and now they got Mekhi Becton, a new enrollee to Stoutland University. Do you think they're going to be able to get him to stay in shape? Put him on the That's the key question, I think, for me so far, because I mean the guy is just a complete freak of nature, but in a way it's kind of like he's on a similar plan, I would say, with Jordan Davis.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think with the veterans they have on here, I think they're gonna you'll see that, and he's been replacing Lane Johnson this week because Lane's hasn't been in OTAs. He hasn't been in OTAs there, so they've been using Becton at right tackle, and he's looked all right. His foot, I like the way his footwork and the leg, footwork. Yeah, I think the way the question is, can he play the inside? Because you're out there, and we heard Tyler C talk about this. You're out there on that island, and you're get that kickback, and you're 1-on-1. He had issues with that at the Jets the last couple of years. He did that, but when you have a guy like Josh Dalton to work out the kinks, it's good. When he gets the blocking heels, he's good. It's when you look at that when you have to be confined and you don't have a lot of space to move and you're playing against those defensive tackles. That's where you got the question marks there. Athletically, does he have the athleticism to do it? Yeah. I think it's more about discipline and finding those blocking angles to do that. The Eagles, those veterans, when you're playing when you still have Lane Johnson there, Jordan Mailata, even Landon Dickerson, they'll get on him. If his weight's not there, they'll get on him in that an offensive lineman. That one's gonna go. I guess he's out in that Brooklyn, that New York accent going. So what you got in your hand there? Are you following the thing? I can hear that. I can just hear that him say that. But it's one of the things where he'll. I think the nutrition staff and he's going to get, and the teammates with him, they're going to get on him more about that and keep staying there. So I don't foresee that being a future. It's a matter of can he just make that switch to the new position and play well at doing it.
Is he going to be back up at right and left? I mean, what are they going to do at left? Fred Johnson's the other guy.
I think Freddie stays even for when it comes to quote unquote vibe checks and everything else like that because he's just character. I think Fred stays and I think he stays and it's swing because Fred. I think the first guy off the bench would be if it's the left tackle. I think they give Fred that shot, and I think they use a right tackle. They would give Becton that shot, and then as one of the backup guards as well too. You still got to wait and see what Keegan can do consistently as well. So. And that's the thing. There's a lot of question marks behind that starting line. There's just question marks starting with the center and guards, starting center guard with Cam Jurgens and Tyler's team. But you got those question marks behind them in depth wise. So you got Matt Hennessy there. He can be one of your first guard options off the bench. But yeah, I can see Becton. I think I can see Becton being the right side, Fred Johnson being the left side, and then if something really goes wrong, you can move back into the left side.
Yeah, to be determined. I mean, I think. If they can get him on the plan, I mean, sky's the limit for Mekhi Becton. I mean, he's somebody who was heralded coming out, and for good reason. I mean, it's not about any of the kind of, you put up a chart of what you need a guy at that position to be able to do. He can check every box. It's just about the consistency and the technique, play in and play out.
Yeah, he's still very young too. Because if you think about this, it's almost like. And I'm not calling him Jason Peters by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not calling that. But you're getting a guy who's young, who can, if say Lane retires in 3 years, but Becton's proof that, you know what, he's warranted a new contract. He's bought into the system. He's still playing well. Well, now you don't have to use a first or second round pick or third round pick on a tackle because now you got Becton sitting there across from and you got Jordan Mailata on the other side. So, yeah, it's a low risk, high reward type of situation.
Absolutely.
That you can get, and you can get on the ground floor cheap too. So I go with that.
Yeah. It's an interesting story. I guess there might not be much substantive here, but do you have any idea about the jersey number change from Josh Sweat from 94 to 19?
I don't know if it's as many cars that he wants in the future or those GRs or something like that. I don't know if it's like that, but I haven't had a chance to talk to him in a little bit. And I know he was up in Boston today. He wasn't at OTAs. He wasn't there either, but I didn't have a chance to talk to him. That's one of the things that's top of my list on that one too. I mean, going from 94 to 19 is like, And I don't know what went behind that.
It's interesting to be watching a defensive end number 19.
1-0 opened up and Bryce Huff got it. It was like, all right, you know what? Everything just goes. All right,
19 and 0 coming after you.
Running back to wide receiver zeros. Okay, I get that. The defensive lineman, defensive edge rushers, zeros and 19. I still think 19. You're the backup punter or the kicker, right? No, okay.
Or quarterback or
that's what I'm like. Maybe there's. I hope there's an interesting
quarterback number.
Was that the Ian Book number? I think it was Ian Bookman. I think it might be Ian Bookman.
We're going to add
I
on
forget.
that. I'll fact
16 or
check that for
19.
the people and throw that up there.
Yeah, I got to check and see if 16 or 19, and then Tanner McKee's in there. So I don't know. Yeah, 16, but 19 is like, ugh.
So this week, Jalen Carter told NBC Sports, Dave Zangaro, he said, "My first year was okay. It wasn't how I wanted it to end. A lot of stuff that's seen on film is stuff that I need to fix. It's okay. It's okay. We here now, and I'm ready to be better than ever." You think, I mean, clearly, again, talking about guys who are just complete freak athletes. Do you think he's going to be able to put together, that full, complete season next year?
I think he can, but also it's almost like it's all based on who's next to him and who's on the opposite side of him. Because I'm really worried now. The one thing you really need the Bryce Huff thing to work out, because if not, it's going to make an easy decision for office to go slide the line towards his side. If Huff's not playing well, okay, you're fine, and then you really bottled up, and now you're setting up that back seven to really get picked apart if possible. So I look at this like, I think if you get that consistent pass rush on the opposite side, I think he really can have a good year. I mean, you got Jordan Davis that slimmed down and he shoots the gap, or if he takes two guys, you're still getting one-on-ones from Jalen Carter, who's a year wiser, who's probably in better, like Davis is in better shape, preparing for the long haul, knowing what's expected of him. Yeah, I think you can get a lot. I think you can get him he can be an 8-9 sack type of guy, easy, just because of the way that some of these interior linemen are playing, especially the ones on their schedule too. So I look at it as a possibility for him to do that. A lot of it's going to go to a lot of his teammates to set him up for those opportunities when it comes to it.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I think a lot of pressure, and I'm glad you brought him up, Jordan Davis. I think it's a big year for him. I think he has, the sky's the limit for him. He's just going to have to be able to be dominant. They're now handing the keys over from Fletcher Cox to Jordan Davis to be that guy right there in the middle, and so he's going to have to put together the full season. But he's got all the traits to make it happen. So,
yeah, especially I think it's funny that he's part. We mentioned you'll see this in the story coming out when we talked to him today. Talking about he's part of a breakfast club afterwards with working with Clint Hurt, and he's like that's part of his way when it comes to condition. They're doing box drills. Like I remember doing a box drill. I'm like, what the heck is that? That was like backs and everything. Like you got him at 350 pounds running around like he's like you got him doing box drills, and he has speed because he flashed that when he was chasing down Josh
absolutely.
Allen.
Absolutely.
If you get that consistently, he's not wearing down as much. Bonus.
It's just the shape. It's the kind of like the Joel Embiid thing. Like, he's got to be in the best. He's got to be in peak cardiovascular shape. He can't be
no Shirley Temples. No pictures of Shirley Temples. I'm not doing this anymore. No,
right. Exactly.
Oh, I miss him. I miss that guy. He was funny.
Chris, anything else you're working on? Obviously, you plugged the one at the beginning. Anything else that you're working on that we should look forward to? People could read the one that we plugged earlier, but what's coming next?
We got Jordan Davis coming up. Piece coming up on a Friday morning. That's coming out. There's quick stuff on there. Mandatory minicamp stuff is going to be out next week. I'll be there on Tuesday and Thursday because it starts Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'll be here Tuesday and Thursday, helping everybody else cover that stuff. And yeah, maybe something coming off of that as well too. If we get somebody who I think we're getting, so fun times. I know it sounds really vague and holding some parts in chest, but you know what? I think it'll be worth it. Just like the Kellen Moore thing I did a couple weeks ago, talking to people. So hope it comes to fruition.
You guys are squatted up over there. You guys are getting it early. You're getting it out accurate. You got you and a number of other guys. People go subscribe over there. Chris, thank you so much for coming by. We'll be looking forward to talking to you again soon.
Hey man, it was always a pleasure talking to you, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fly ball left field, pretty well hit. Cave on the run toward the corner. It is gone. Opposite field, 3-run home run. That ball just took off. It's a 5-run ninth inning for the Phils.
Hey y'all, to for this part of the episode, of course, we had Chris Franklin earlier to talk to us about Eagles OTAs. Now we have Frank Klose from 97.3 ESPN, who covers the Phillies over there during baseball season. You can hear him every Tuesday at 2:40 p.m. on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's Frank Klose. How are you, Frank?
Hey, I'm doing great, Matt. How are you?
Good. It's a busy times. Really exciting time. Now that we're getting back in the swing of Eagles football. Some of the OTAs, some of that is really exciting, and then of course you've got Phillies who are on pace to have one of the best seasons, of course, in Phillies history, potentially the best season in Phillies history. I guess right off the top, I mean, is that the trajectory you really think that we land there? This is the season?
Well, I think clearly. Let me preface it by saying this. I think too much was made of the schedule so far for the Phillies, but these West Coast trips, and they kind of trip up a team. I know it's I know it's a human game, right? So when you have to go across the country and you're playing in thin air you're not used to, and you're sleeping differently and playing at different times, I think that over the last few years that tended to sort of mess with the Phillies a little bit. And besides this road trip the Phillies just completed, they also have a 10-game road trip where they go from Arizona to LA to Seattle. I forget which order, but I might have gotten that order right. But that's those types of things trip you up a little bit. I didn't think they were going to play at a 750 clip the whole time, but I think you saw that it's still a very good team. Do very good teams have bad days? Yes. Me, and Ranger Suarez has been someone I've been a big fan of for a long time.
Same.
And he finally had a bad start, and that's going to happen. So I think getting comfortable to a pace that large might be a little bit much, but I think there will be certain series that will kind of pull that pace back a little bit, but I still think they're a very, very good team. The Braves, I think we need to see what the Braves are going to do to compensate for now missing not one, but two of their stars. So, some of their pace is going to be messed up.
Maybe in the NL.
And I know it's tempting to, if you're from the Phillies side, thinking like, oh man, this is good for us. But no, it's kind of bad for baseball. I thought it was, I thought part of the joy of the Phillies fans' experience the last couple of years was knocking out the Braves and with those guys on the roster, So it's a stronger competition. I think it's better all around. So but anyway, but I think at the end of the day, certainly the Braves are going to have a few, maybe not a whole lot fewer, because they have a lot of really good players, but they'll have a few fewer wins in their final tally. So we talk about pace. I'm not so much worried about that for a baseball team, but they need to show that they can get to the playoffs and win. So are they well positioned to go to the playoffs? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, they got to have the right pieces to go and win a World Series. And you saw gradually with this Phillies team, getting to the playoffs. Once they got there, their front half of the roster that you see a lot of was pretty darn good the last few years. And so, Phillies will probably, like a lot of other teams, will make some tweaks to try to be playoff ready down the line. But, so there's still a lot to be said. And you know what? Knock on wood. I mean, the Phillies could have an injury,
Absolutely.
You hope they don't.
It happens in sports.
Yeah, it happens to everybody. So, right now they're down Trey Turner, who was having a heck of a year before he got hurt. But, it's the nature of the game. You want to have 5 starters all season. One of them, heck, if you break a fingernail, you want to be on the injured list and miss a couple starts. I mean, that's
for a few days.
Yeah, that's what happens now. So
that's why you play 162
to try to pick a pace. I think is really hard. Different teams will pick up momentum along the way. So it's really kind of hard to say. But are they a very, very good team? Yes. Do I think they're a playoff team? Absolutely. But as you said, it's a long season, and if, in a lot of respects, we're still seeing just the first little bit of it.
That's right. It's about a third. We're about a third in.
Yep.
So
a lot of baseball.
A little bit more than a third. Yeah, it's a lot of baseball left. So in that vein, I mean, no team's unbeatable. They've lost 18 games. They've won 39. Last I checked. If there is a weakness on this team, if we're nitpicking, because it is the team with the best record in baseball at the moment, what are those weaknesses?
Geez, it's really hard to say. I still think that the issues might be a matter of depth. Speaking to the fact that you might have some injuries along the way. I mean, every team needs 7 or 8 starters in any given year. The Phillies have gotten a really good, really good time out of their top 4, and certainly Wheeler, Nola, Suarez, Sanchez, Walker. He's still kind of catching his groove. I know he's the one that seems to irk him the most. But Spencer Turnbull looked pretty good when he got some starts, and I know people wanted to see more of him, but I know that they're at the same time looking at a guy who hasn't thrown more than 59 innings in any season, except one in his career, and that was way back in 2019, I believe, that he kind of had a full slate of innings as a starter. So they want to try to preserve him, but at the end of the day, if you lose a starter for a while and he ends up jumping into rotation, I want to know who's behind him, because Phillies have been really lucky with not having rainouts. The Braves certainly had to deal with a lot of rainouts that the Phillies didn't. That's a good thing when you don't have the rainouts, because then you end up with double headers at inconvenient times. You need extra pitching, and I mean, you saw with San Fran, you have a bullpen game. Even if you win that bullpen game, then the next day you're all taxed, and maybe it's the next one you lose, even if you can get through that bullpen game. So you want to try to avoid that as much as possible. I don't like the starting depth beyond Turnbull.
Sanchez? Turnbull. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So like Turnbull's like number 6 right now, right? So if they need somebody, it's him. But then beyond that, they have a guy at AAA who's kind of
AAA, who's really good.
Yeah, Michael
Clausen,
Mercado. So yeah, he's going to be. He might be someone they would call upon. But I'd like to see depth there. You always need extra relief. I mean, that's just but again, the Phillies bullpen's been pretty good. I mean, the toughest one is Sir Anthony Dominguez, but you also know that if he gets his mechanics straight, he can, look down the stretch at 22. He is a major reason why they got to the World Series. He and Alvarado just teamed up to just take that back into that bullpen and just shut it down. And you got to think that there's more room for improvement there. And then, of course, I know people will quibble over the offense so far from a few of their outfielders. I'm sure we'll get into that, but I think there's still plenty of time to write the story on Johan Rojas. Still plenty of time for even some of the vets to maybe who are struggling at the plate to get it back together, because they are vets and they have a track record. So it's hard to say that that's a weakness yet, because at the end of the day, it's still kind of a small sample size.
Yeah, about a third of the way. Before the season, Dave Dombrowski and the team decided basically the strategy, and I think Dombrowski straight up just said, I'm keeping my powder dry for the All-Star break, and then we'll assess at the All-Star break and see what we need to do. What do you think that they'll bring on if they do decide at the All-Star break that they do want to improve this team, which I would assume they would?
Yeah. I think they'll be active at the trade deadline, but it's one of those things where we never know what players are actually available out there. Now we might see some get traded, and some people might say, "Oh man, he would have really helped the Phillies," but at the same time, you need a match up as a trade partner. But the thing about Dombrowski is he's not a reactionary. He's not gonna make moves based upon what somebody else is doing. He's going to look at his roster and say, all right, well, what opportunities exist? And is this an improvement over what we have right now? And so could he get somebody that could, maybe Rojas is struggling with his offense a little bit, or, maybe Castellanos is still struggling a little bit. So maybe he finds a short-term rental to kind of plug or be a little extra boost on the offensive side. That's something he could do. But there's not a clear need right now where you look around and say, well, we have to have X. You always want an extra reliever, and almost every year they get one. but there's no real glaring need right now in that. Again, the stories of some of these guys are still being written. Johan Rojas could he's one of the reasons I think they had him in the major leagues was if he's going to need to develop as a hitter, I think they wanted to see him facing better pitching and working with Kevin Long, the renowned hitting coach, right? So I think that was the mindset there. And you know what? If they don't think he's ready to perform at that level yet, do they pick up a bat? I mean, you never know what's out there until like July, right? Because how many look around the league right now? How many teams are still in it? How many are floating around 500? And if you're around 500, you're a wild card team contender right now. So
some
really
Mets
don't know
players are saying they believe they're still in it, and some Mets players are throwing their gloves into the stands
and dropping expletives about the team and then getting released
about how bad they are.
Oh man, I would love to hear his story from the outside. I'm sure he'll tell it since if he's willing to say that to a reporter. But there's a lot of teams that think they're in it. But I mean, they could be fooling themselves. But I mean, so you don't really know what's available yet. I heard, on the radio station I did the Phillies mailbag, and they, someone was asking about Jazz Chisholm. I mean, I don't know that they want to. I don't think that they would want to make any long,
isn't it? Yeah.
What's that?
That's a long-term investment. We were saying the same thing. Yeah.
Right. It would be somebody that you have to also trade a lot of long-term assets for because he's not a free agent until 2027. I think that they'd be more likely to find somebody who's a rental that doesn't necessarily rule out Rojas. Like if they think that they need more of a bat around, because you could put somebody in the corner and put Brandon Marsh in center and not worry about it. I think they would still want Rojas around.
Like this year's Cody Bellinger would be a type of. I mean, not Cody Bellinger because he just signed, but this year's version of that kind of guy.
Yeah, someone who might be hitting free agency that's playing well that that you think could put you over the eye. But again, you don't know who those people are because so many teams still think that they're in it. So there's really not a clear inventory yet, and it could be that they're opportunistic about it. If somebody's there, one nice thing the Phillies have going for them is an improved farm system. When Dave Dombrowski got into this, Phillies didn't have a lot in the system. Well, if you look today, right now on MLB Pipeline, the Phillies have 5 prospects in the top 100. I mean, if you do the math, 30 teams out of 100, well, that means each team's going to have 3, and then 10 teams might have a 4th. Well, so they're a little ahead of the curve there. And so then you start thinking like, okay, well, if I need to pick up somebody, Dombrowski could be thinking, well, okay, well then I have some extra pieces I can feel better about trading because I know that I still have other prospects around. So I think it will be might be easier for him to make a trade this year because of that. But at the end of the day, they're just prospects. They're not established major leaguers yet, and the Phillies window, I wouldn't say it's closing, but certainly JT Realmuto, he's sort of defying age lately. I mean, he's given you a lot for someone his age who's a catcher, a position that really takes the toll on the body, and he's still catching a lot and catching day games after night games. You want to take advantage of having him around, and certainly Harper's in his prime, and Nola's in his prime, and Wheeler's in his prime. So you kind of at the same time don't want to see this go away. When you have some extra prospects, not that there's ever enough, but you might feel more. Justin Crawford probably going to be a really nice player, really nice outfielder someday. But you might not feel so bad about trading him if you get a quality piece in return that helps you win a championship. Nobody's crying about some of the trades the Phillies made in 08 and 09 to get them to the World Series. And
that's right.
Carlos Carrasco had a fine career with the Indians, and then they were still hanging around as recently as last year, right? But he that was a nice prospect, but you got Cliff Lee at the 09 deadline and he was electric. So I mean, it takes quality to get quality, but anyway, my point is, you don't feel so bad. You might years ago, if you just had, Justin Crawford, right now he's their number 4 prospect, I believe, on a lot of lists. Years ago, you might be clinging to Justin Crawford saying you can't touch him, but this year they might consider it if it's in the right deal.
That's interesting. This off season's biggest addition was Whit Merrifield, and he's really struggling at the dish at about 184. Castellanos is barely hitting over 200. I mean, at what point here maybe the point is never, but do they have a couple days at AAA? I mean,
No,
what
I
do you
don't.
do there?
I don't think they're candidates to do that. But here's my thoughts on both of them. It's slightly different for each of them. Now, Castellanos, his track record in Philadelphia is he's high, very high at times, and then very low at other times. Last year, it just so happened when they were without Bryce Harper, he had one of his hotter streaks, right, and ended up being an all-star in the National League. Other months, he didn't look that great. Even the year that he came to Philly, kind of started off slow. I mean, that's what people remember. But he did have a couple months where he hit over 300. That was kind of quiet. So, I see someone like Castellanos, having those highs, having those lows, and that's why they call it a batting average, because at the end, it might average out. Now you're getting a little deep into this. You're starting to get a little deeper in. Castellanos, certainly played almost. Well, he might have been in every single game so far. I can't remember now if he got a day off, but he's certainly playing a lot. Merrifield, he's 30 games in, averaging about 3 at bats in those games. Merrifield, I think he's a little bit different. He's used to playing more, perhaps, and this is kind of an adjustment for him. But if you look at his track record, I mean, this is not Whit Merrifield that you'd be used to. So, last year with Toronto, he batted a very respectable 272, and he was often a leadoff hitter on the team, but he played almost every day. He made 145 appearances last year, and so he's going to be below that pace this year, and kind of a new role for him. But I think he's the type of player who will get it together, just because he always has. I mean, I don't think he is on the older end, but I don't think that all of a sudden this was the off season he just aged out. So
fall off a cliff.
Yeah. I mean, usually people don't decline that rapidly. So he's got, again, human beings, new environments, new role. Maybe he's adjusting. So I do want to see more of him and see what he can do, because he was a player I always really, really liked. And when I was listening to him in an interview in the offseason, before the Phillies signed him, he was talking about how he was hoping for a multi-year deal with the team, and saying things like, well, hey, I know my worth. I think I deserve the multi-year. Well, he ended up not taking the multi-year deal, and he took a job where he was not a starter or not expected to play most of the time. So, so you never know how that could affect somebody, and maybe he's feeling like he's trying to prove he deserves the multi-year deal all at once. And it's a real thing that people put too much pressure on themselves. So I think after a while, he'll be Whit Merrifield that people got used to over the years, and that's a player that's been a pretty consistent, 275 to 300 hitter, and hey, you know what, if he hits 275 in July, August, September, and into the playoffs, you feel fine about him, So no one will remember how he hit earlier in the season.
Hopefully he turns it around. I mean, Trey Turner started off cold, not this cold, but pretty cold. So, yeah, maybe he turns it around.
But yeah, in terms of the minor leagues, I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, right? The Phillies have the luxury. By the way, I'll just add one more thing. Phillies have the luxury of playing this out. Why? Because they're winning games. Yeah, I know they lost 2 series in a row for the first time, but they're at the end of the day, they're still the best record in baseball. So, it's not like playing them is going to cost them the championship, right? They've got the leeway, they've got the wiggle room. Other players are performing. I think it's fine to just let them sort of hit their own way out of it.
That's ideal. That's from the player's perspective. You always want that opportunity to get your way out of it, and then sometimes that pays big later. And when a coach or somebody invests in you, and you feel like you want to play harder because they doubled down on you. So, someone who is playing well for the Phillies is Alec Bohm. He's 3rd in the major leagues and RBIs, 1st in doubles while batting .308. Would you say he's the Phillies MVP so far this season?
In the early on, yeah. I mean, by the way, he kind of had a rough week or so now. I think he's kind of run out of some steam, and it was a good thing that he had a day off. I thought a couple days ago. But I mean, Alec Bohm, my viewpoint of him, and I was a little surprised he had that sophomore slump that he had, because he's a guy that makes contact, and I think when you hit the ball, sometimes you'll be out, of course, but good things happen, right? So when he comes up with runners on, you feel really, really good that he's going to drive the runners in, because he's going to make contact. And so I think that's been the story of Alec Bohm. And I think people had thought he should have been like a home run hitter, or maybe he started to think he should be a big home run hitter, but I think he's the type of guy that he just makes a lot of contact. A lot of them are going to be doubles, and then some eventually will go over the fence. I mean, he's got 5 home runs so far. I mean, I don't know if that would make him a home run hitter. He might be on pace for 16 or 17, but you would expect at least that, that he is able to make that contact. And again, he had a little rough stretch the last couple weeks, but especially in the last week in particular. But I think he'll just settle in and just keep on hitting the ball. I mean, I think he did a good job of when the league adjusted to him when he first came up. He struggled a little bit, but then he made the adjustment back, and he can hit balls that are placed all over the place. He goes and finds them. I think that's been his great strength lately. Is I think he's very prepared going up to his at bats, and he looks for stuff that he can hit even if it's out of the zone. So. What a nice surprise, and for me, beyond the bat, because I always thought the bat was there. I think he deserves a lot of credit for his defense and the improvement he's made as a defender. Because when he first came up in 2020, I think I was saying, okay, well, maybe he'll get 2 years at third base. If they can eke through 2 years, then he could take over for Andrew McCutchen in left field. I mean, that was my original thought, and I really thought he was going to change positions. And the fact that he's still at third base and holding his own, I think that's he had a couple misplays this week again. I also feel like he's the type that if he's struggling in one area, it kind of translates over to the next, and I think that's something
he gets
he's
very frustrated. He very much he gets in his head. You can see it when he hits into a double play. He'll slam his helmet down on the first base line, things like that.
Yeah, I think that's something he could still work on, and maybe the more experience he gets, the more he'll be ready to let something roll off him. But he is more than held his own at third base, and the fact that you can throw him over to the other. Last year in particular, I went going back and forth between third and first as much as he did was very impressive. And even now, like he is the backup first baseman pretty much still. So I think that his defense has come this far along is really important, because when you thought about the 2022 Phillies, who still did make it to the World Series, when you consider how that year started and the defense that they had with Bohm not playing well, Didi Gregorius at shortstop and second base. I mean, Gene Segura wasn't a terrible defender, but he has less range than Stott does. And you had both Schwarber and Castellanos in the outfield every day. Like when you think of all the
that was a worse version of Castellanos has improved a lot as a right fielder.
Yeah, his range is still pretty weak, but he can catch what he gets to. I think that's the thing that but the way that they have Rojas in center with tremendous. When you have Marsh in left and Rojas in center, you can play. Right. You can play Rojas a little bit more towards right and kind of cut into that gap a little bit, because that Marsh to his right has a lot of range. And when Pache plays, you feel really good about his range too. So, so anyway, we just and then remember Hoskins was at first base, and that defense was terrible. I think the one thing that they were able to do is really clean up that defense. You got Schwarber full time as a DH. You have 2 center fielders between left and center and into right field, and then in the infield, Bohm is better. They have Turner and Sosa is good at short.
Sosa is good.
Stott is a plus defender. And Harper at first, like that. That's a really nice defense. So one of their big weaknesses a couple years ago is a real strength, and I credit that to being why they're winning so many more games right now. I mean, people tend to take that for granted. I think we saw when the Phillies played the Rangers were not playing clean. They were making a lot of errors on the field, and it really, really showed. it showed why they're struggling around the 500 mark instead of winning a lot of games and being the World Series team that they were. So especially if I'm the Rangers and I have my starters out, I want to at least have some subs that catch the ball. I mean, that's really really important. So, but a good defense, especially. I could go on and on about the defense because, additionally, the starting pitching for the Phillies has been so good and going so deep into games. Part of it is the guys behind them are catching the ball. They're not giving outs away. And then all of a sudden, if a team makes a couple errors behind the pitcher, like
a 30 pitch inning.
Yeah. The next thing you know, you're pitching a ton and you're getting gassed and then you exit the game a couple batters to an inning early. And then the bullpen becomes more taxed. Like,
high leverage situation with two guys on and things like that.
Yeah, like the defense makes such a difference on this Phillies team. So, and that's the nice thing right now. There's probably, if you look around the Phillies diamond, Castellanos is probably your worst fielder, but they did a good job covering for that by having two center fielders in the outfield with them.
So it's June. Frank. Do you think we're gonna have another Schwarber Fest?
Of course, and it's. And by the way, he went through a real stretch without a home run. I was like, I didn't count up how many games it was, but he was stuck on 9 home runs for a while, and he finally had another one the other day. But Schwarber, the ball does travel differently in the warm weather, and he knows how to get a hold of one, right? So, and even you see early on some of his power. That's right. He had 2 home runs in the last 7 games, but he had gone through a little bit of a little stretch there where I could probably count it up if I really wanted to, but his power, it seems about June. He was always a slow start. Yeah, he's 2 home runs in his last 3 games, and then. From May 26th, I got to look all the way back to May 6th. Yeah, he went 20 days without a home run, which is uncharacteristic of him. But he was coming back off of a couple days where he needed to take a break, right? So I'm sure he's getting his timing back. When the weather heats up, the ball travels further. Some of his warning track shots elsewhere might have gone out, in the summer heat. So, but once he gets going, he doesn't seem to slow down. So I like that you saw 2 home runs in the last 3 games, and I think as you get to June, you will see your customary Schwarber June.
Yes, yeah. Well, he's lost some weight too, so even if he doesn't get it out of the park, he can. Some of those aren't singles. We might see a Schwarber triple.
I love it. He's stealing bases too. Like, by the way, you can't. Again, just that move of him being the full-time DA. He made 1 appearance and left, I believe, this year. But having him as your DH too, like he's just focused on the hitting. Like I think that matters. Yes, so, and you have seen more out of him. I know. We're used to the Schwarber's batting average at like 198. Well, he's at 246, which is not,
way better.
Yeah, it's when you consider his OBP is at 369, so he's still just a shy under 800 OPS. So he's and that's even without his power for that little stretch. So yeah, he's gonna. I think you're seeing the benefit of him just being a designated hitter and not spending a lot of time in the field and keeps his body. Think about too, like if you're in the field, your body's working, right? Like he's saving his energy for that and getting less wear and tear in the field. So I think that has a lot to do with what you're seeing out of him, and it's been really good for the Phillies so far in his Phillies career. But now that he's in this role and he knows his role, and you remember when the Phillies signed him and Castellanos, the thought was, well, okay, well they'll sort of alternate between the outfield and DH, and with Harper's injury, Castellanos had to play right field every day, so that made him play left field it wasn't what they signed up for. So, but I think this is him being the full-time DH is really good for him.
Absolutely. Before I let you go, Frank, do you think the team's going to have over or under 105 wins?
Under. I think that's under. I mean, I think that's we look again. You look at paces. I can see that 10-game road trip tripping up the Phillies a little bit. somebody's going to have a little nagging injury at some point. Hopefully nothing too serious, right? There'll be enough reasons for things, or you'll have a rain out, and then you have to have a double header, and then it throws your whole bullpen off for 3 or 4 days. Like stuff like that's going to happen. So
yeah,
I think that's it's a little bit much to assume the Phillies will keep up this pace. But even look at the 2011 Phillies, right? That was a team I followed really closely. I had full season tickets. I went to the park all the damn time, and they were probably the best Phillies team I've ever seen in my lifetime, and they won 102. So there'll be games that that the reliever's not available because he pitched 2 days in a row. Like there'll be games where you back-to-back days you'll have Hoffman and Alvarado close out 8 and 9, and you're all set. But then they need a day off, and so then you'll see. I don't know. pick a name. Again, bullpen's pretty deep, but maybe Gregory Soto can't do it the next day. So there's in a long season there'll be all these little things that keep you from winning here and there. So I still tend to think, even when the over, I kind of had I don't think anybody actually. It's kind of funny because last 2 years I've been flat out asked on the year for win total prediction, and I was 2 for 2 the last 2 years.
Okay.
Nobody asked me this year, but I kind of had them around 95-ish, and I think that's still about right.
Okay.
And that's pretty damn good.
Oh, very good team. So you're still going under 100 then?
I am.
Okay.
And that's not a knock. It's just that it's a long season, and stuff's going to happen along the way. You can't play at this pace the whole time. You even saw that 2011, there were stretches where it felt like the sky was falling, and like I was so into it back then, as a fan with season tickets, like I just remember my mood being up or down depending on how the last day went, and I'm sure I had plenty of days where my mood was down because I lost something, but it's just what happens down the stretch, and and if they have a lead heading into the playoffs, you'll start to see them rest some guys. So then that chips away on the other end too, because they want everybody ready for the playoffs. So I think there are many reasons why that pace is going to be unsustainable.
Well, it's still a great ride, and as you said a second ago, Frank, 95, 97, 94 wins is nothing to turn your nose up at, and as long as they get more wins than the Braves, they actually get that bye potentially for the this year, that would be great.
Or it won't be, right? It didn't seem to help the Braves, right? I don't know how I feel about the layoff, but there's still some time there, so I mean you never know. Again, I don't want to. I'm not even ready to declare the Phillies winners of the NL East. I'm just not, just because the Braves also have the Braves have a really stocked system that's going to help them in one of two ways. Either some of the talent rises to the majors and they contribute, or they trade them for some pieces that really help them. So, maybe they can help close some of the, not all of, they're not going to get a National League MVP like they had with Acuna, but maybe they get somebody that, helps make up a lot of that. So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, that's the thing too. Like the trade deadline, teams change. So, it's hard to predict now final totals, or maybe, Phillies could trade for somebody and he could be like Cliff Lee was in 09, or they could trade for somebody and then just be a colossal flop. And, so
Michael Lorenzen have a no hitter and then
fall off the face of the earth.
Not such a great finish to the story. It was a great start though.
Yeah. Fantastic. Oh yeah. No, it was. It's a shame. I actually thought the Phillies should have brought him back just for depth purposes, not to be a starter, but it's, yeah, he hasn't. I don't know that he's done anything too exciting in Texas so far. But in fact, I haven't even thought to look because he didn't play against the Phillies. So yeah, he's 2-3 with a 3.35 ERA and 8 starts. So he's been pretty decent as a starter for the Rangers so far.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Frank. It's always great talking Phils with you. Of course, I'll bring you back later in the season to talk more about it, but great start to the season. Always fun having you on.
Oh, thanks so much, Matt.
So no, Jay, no. See this? I like what y'all doing. Y'all pissing me off. What happened? So Jalen Hurts gets blamed for having that terrible defense we had. No, right 30th.
But what I'm saying
no. I don't know what you're saying.
We don't know how good that defense is going to be this year. This is an offensive team.
Okay, so I personally don't know any quarterbacks that can just win with having a ranked 30 defense. I don't know anybody that does that. Do y'all? Tell me, do y'all?
I mean,
and then another thing is, every year I'm playing, every year that I'm active, every year that I'm the starter, we go to the playoffs.
Gotcha.
I don't care who's out here, the 30th defense, the number 1 defense, we go to the playoffs.
Gotcha.
So the fact that my defense is trash, because we were trash on defense last year. We don't want to tackle, we don't do nothing, we don't cover. We got old-ass corners playing.
Yeah.
My thing is this, because y'all get me upset and I'm getting mad.
Good.
I hate when people don't look at the whole picture.
Gotcha.
The big face is Jalen Hurts. I get that. All the money number. I understand all that, right? And he didn't look perfect last year.
No.
But we're not going to say nothing about that defense we had last year.